The alarm came at 3 in the morning, Earth time. Admiral Hyun-woo Park was already awake when his communicator buzzed. He had learned long ago that peaceful sleep was a luxury for men in his position. He grabbed the device from his nightstand and answered. The face on the screen was pale and shaking. Captain Lee from the Outer Colonies Defense Network looked like he had seen death itself. Admiral, we have a situation. 6 colonies just went dark, all at the same time. Hyun-woo sat up straight. 6 colonies did not simply go dark, not all at once. Which ones? New Hanyang, Busan Station, Daegu Outpost, Gwangju Colony, Incheon Prime, and Ulsan Haven. Sir, the last signals we received were scrambled distress calls. Something about ships. Lots of ships. Hyun-woo was already pulling on his uniform. His sister Ji-won lived on Daegu Outpost. She was a teacher there, working with colony children. She sent him messages every week talking about her students and the garden she was growing. Send every available ship to those coordinates. Now. But Hyun-woo knew they would be too late. Deep in his gut, he already knew. By the time Earth's defense ships arrived at the colonies, there was nothing left to defend. The settlements were intact but empty. Houses stood with doors wide open. Meals sat half-eaten on tables. Children's toys lay scattered in the streets. But the people were gone, all of them. 3.2 million human beings had vanished in less than 18 hours. The security footage told the story. Massive ships had appeared in orbit around each colony. They did not fire weapons. They did not destroy buildings. Instead, they deployed capture technology that the defense systems could not stop. Beams of light that pulled people up from the ground, regardless of where they hit or what they did. The recordings showed humans being taken from their homes, from underground shelters, from sealed bunkers. Nothing stopped the beams. And then the ships jumped to faster-than-light travel and disappeared. Dr. Nari Choi stood in the council chamber on Earth, watching the footage for the 20th time. She was a diplomat by training, someone who believed in negotiation and peaceful solutions. But as she watched families torn apart by those beams of light, something cold settled in her chest. Next to her, Chancellor Tae-yang Bei watched with a stone face. He was the elected leader of all human colonies, the man responsible for billions of lives. Right now, 3 million of those lives were gone. Do we know who did this? He asked quietly. Nari pulled up a holographic display. The image showed a species with gray skin and multiple arms. Their ships were blocky and functional, built for hauling cargo rather than beauty. The Vexari Empire. They are a mid-level power in this region of the galaxy. They control about 40 star systems, and their economy depends on resource extraction, mining, manufacturing, processing hazardous materials. So they need workers, Bei said. It was not a question. Yes, and apparently they decided humans would be suitable for forced labor. The message from the Vexari arrived 3 days later. It was brief and businesslike. The Vexari overlord, whose name translated to something like Rexcal, spoke directly to the camera. Humans of Earth, we have acquired 3.2 million of your species for labor purposes. They are healthy and will be put to productive use in our facilities. If you wish to purchase their return, the price is 500 trillion credits. You have 1 standard galactic year to decide. If you attempt military action, they will be terminated. We await your response. The transmission ended. Chancellor Bei sat in his office staring at the blank screen. 500 trillion credits. It was a number beyond calculation. More money than Earth had generated in its entire history. The Vexari knew this. They knew Earth could never pay. This was not a ransom. It was a statement. The Vexari were telling humanity that they could take whoever they wanted, and Earth could do nothing about it. Nari Choi tried the diplomatic approach first. She contacted the Galactic Council, the organization that was supposed to maintain order among the spacefaring species. She presented evidence of the abductions and demanded intervention. The council listened politely. Then they explained that the situation was complicated. The Vexari were a sovereign empire. Earth was a relatively new member of the galactic community. There were jurisdictional issues to consider. Perhaps mediation would be appropriate, but military intervention was not something the council could authorize. In other words, they would do nothing. Other species expressed sympathy. Some sent messages of support. A few offered to pray for the safe return of the abducted humans. But when Nari asked for actual help, for ships or sanctions or anything that might pressure the Vexari, They all had reasons why they could not act. No one wanted to anger the Vexari Empire. It was easier to let Earth deal with its own problem. Meanwhile, in the Vexari Empire, a young woman named Hana Song woke up in a metal cage. She did not know where she was. She did not know how much time had passed since the light took her from her home on New Hanyang. Around her, thousands of other humans filled similar cages, stacked in rows that stretched beyond sight. The air smelled like metal and fear. People were crying. Some were shouting, demanding answers. Most just sat in shock, trying to understand what had happened. A Vexari guard walked past the cages. Its 4 arms carried electronic devices that it did not bother to explain. It looked at the humans the way someone might look at livestock. "You will work," the guard said in heavily accented human language. "You will follow instructions. You will be fed and housed according to your productivity. This is your life now. Accept it." Hana pressed her face against the bars of her cage. Somewhere out there was Earth. Somewhere out there was home. And she had to believe that someone was coming to get them. She had to believe that Earth would not abandon them. Admiral Hyunwoo Park confirmed what he already knew in his heart. His sister Ji-won's name was on the list of abducted individuals. She was somewhere in Vexari space, probably in a labor camp, probably suffering. He sat alone in his quarters aboard the flagship and allowed himself 5 minutes of grief. 5 minutes to be a brother who had failed to protect his sister. 5 minutes to be human. Then he dried his eyes and became an admiral again. Chancellor Bay called an emergency meeting. Every major military and intelligence leader on Earth attended. The mood in the room was dark. Everyone understood the situation. Earth could not pay the ransom. The Galactic Council would not help. A direct military assault against the Vexari Empire would be costly and might result in the death of the hostages. But doing nothing was not an option. Nari Choi stood and activated a presentation. She had spent 72 hours without sleep, working on what she was about to propose. "We cannot win a conventional war," she said. "The Vexari have more ships, better technology, and they hold our people hostage. But we do not need to fight a conventional war. We need to make them regret ever touching a human being." She showed them her plan. It was not about destroying the Vexari military. It was about destroying everything that made their empire function. Their economy, their trade networks, their reputation, their future. "We make it cost them everything," Nari said. "We make sure that even if they win, victory means nothing. We take away their ability to profit from this. We take away their standing in the galaxy. We take away their hope." The room was silent. What she was proposing was not warfare. It was systematic destruction. Chancellor Bay looked around the table. He saw anger in every face. He saw determination. And he saw something else. He saw people who were ready to cross lines that humanity had never crossed before. "The Vexari took our people and expected us to play by galactic rules," Bay said slowly. "They expected us to negotiate or fight like everyone else. They thought we were weak because we value individual lives." He stood up and his voice became harder. "We are going to teach the galaxy what happens when you touch humanity. We are not going to negotiate. We are not going to wage a conventional war. We are going to make the Vexari Empire wish they had never heard the word human. By the time we are done, they will beg for mercy, and we will not give it." The vote was unanimous. Admiral Hyunwoo Park was given command of the Strategic Vengeance Fleet. His orders were simple and terrible. "Make the Vexari pay. Use any means necessary. Do not stop until they had nothing left." As the meeting ended, Hyunwoo stood looking at a star chart showing Vexari space. Somewhere in that vast territory was his sister. Somewhere were 3 million humans who were counting on Earth to save them. Earth would save them. But first, Earth would make sure the Vexari understood the true cost of their actions. The campaign was beginning. And it would not end until no joy was left in what the Vexari had done. The first strike came 3 months after the abductions. Not a military strike, something far more damaging. A Vexari cargo ship carrying rare metals arrived at the Kepler trade station, one of the largest commercial hubs in the sector. When station security scanned the cargo, alarms went off immediately. Every container showed traces of radioactive contamination. Not enough to be dangerous, but enough to make the cargo worthless under galactic trade laws. The cargo was rejected. The ship was quarantined, and the Vexari lost a contract worth billions. It happened again the next week, and the week after that. Vexari ships started arriving at ports with contaminated goods. Sometimes it was radiation markers. Sometimes it was biological traces. Always just enough to fail inspection, never enough to prove sabotage. Within 6 months, nobody wanted to buy Vexari products. The risk was too high. Captain Daijung Kim sat in the briefing room of the stealth ship Shadow Wing, reviewing the latest mission results with his team. They were 6 soldiers, specialists in operations that officially did not exist. Their job was to make the Vexari bleed without ever being seen. 15 cargo ships tagged this month, Kim reported. No casualties, no detection. The Vexari are starting to inspect their own cargo before shipping, but they cannot find what we used. By the time they figure out our methods, we will have switched to something else. Admiral Hyunwoo Park nodded from the video screen. He looked older now, worn down by months of planning and execution, but his eyes were still sharp. Good work. Phase 1 is succeeding. Their export economy is down 60%. Now we move to Phase 2. Phase 2 was Dr. Nari Choi's specialty. While the military targeted Vexari trade, she targeted something more valuable. Their reputation. Human media networks began broadcasting across the galaxy. Not propaganda, facts. Cold documented facts about Vexari history. Every war crime. Every broken treaty. Every species they had exploited over centuries. Earth's intelligence services had spent months gathering this information, and now it flooded every communication channel. The documentaries were professionally made and impossible to ignore. They showed Vexari labor camps where workers died from exhaustion. They showed destroyed worlds where the Vexari had stripped every resource and left nothing behind. They showed the faces of species that no longer existed because they had been in the Vexari's way, and always at the end came the message. This is what they did to others. Now they have taken 3 million humans. This is what they are. The effect was immediate. Vexari citizens living on other worlds started facing problems. Students were expelled from universities. Workers lost their jobs. Artists found their work banned. The name Vexari became associated with cruelty and barbarism. Some species protested this treatment. They said it was unfair to blame all Vexari for the actions of their government. But Earth was relentless. Every day brought new revelations, new evidence, new reasons to distrust and avoid anything connected to the Vexari Empire. In a small office on Earth, Nari watched the reports and felt nothing. Once she would have felt guilty about destroying an entire culture's reputation. Once she had believed in fairness and proportional response. That was before she watched footage of human children being torn from their parents. Before she read the intelligence reports about conditions in Vexari labor camps. Before she understood that mercy to the cruel was cruelty to their victims. Now she just worked. 18 hours a day, every day, crafting the campaign that would make the Vexari a curse word across the galaxy. Year 1 became Year 2. The Vexari economy continued its collapse. Companies that had traded with them went bankrupt. Financial institutions that had loaned them money faced massive losses. The Vexari currency dropped in value until it was barely worth the material it was printed on. And still, Earth's campaign continued. Captain Kim's team conducted what they called ghost operations. They would infiltrate Vexari military bases, disable security systems, walk through restricted areas and leave messages, simple messages. We were here. We could have killed you all. We chose not to. This time, the psychological impact was devastating. Vexari soldiers lived in constant fear. They knew humans could reach them anywhere. They knew that death might come at any moment. Many deserted. Others refused to follow orders. The military structure began to crack. Meanwhile, in a labor camp on a Vexari mining world, Hana Song was planning an escape. She had spent 18 months working in the mines, watching humans die from exhaustion and neglect. The Vexari guards treated them like machines, expecting them to work until they broke. But Hana had not broken. She had organized. Quietly, carefully, she had built a network of resistance among the prisoners. They shared information. They sabotaged equipment. They slowed production in ways the guards could not detect, and they planned. The breakout happened during a shift change. Hana and 40 other prisoners had stolen guard uniforms over months, piece by piece. They had memorized patrol patterns. They had identified blind spots in the security system. When the moment came, they moved fast. They disabled the power grid. They opened the main gates. And they ran. Not all of them made it. The guards recovered quickly and began hunting the escapees. But Hana and 6 others reached the spaceport and stowed away on a cargo ship. They hid among shipping containers for 3 weeks, barely surviving on stolen supplies. When the ship docked at a neutral station, they emerged and asked for asylum. Within hours, Earth's embassy had retrieved them. Within days, Hana was on a ship heading home. Her arrival on Earth was broadcast across every human world. The images of her stepping off the transport, thin and scarred but alive, became a symbol. Earth had not forgotten. Earth was coming. Hana gave testimony before the Galactic Council. She spoke calmly, describing every detail of her captivity, the work that killed people, the guards who laughed when prisoners fell, the children forced to work alongside adults, the complete absence of medical care or basic dignity. When she finished, the council chamber was silent. Several species representatives looked uncomfortable. They had ignored Earth's pleas for help. Now they were seeing the consequences of their inaction. Hana looked at them without expression. Then she said something that would be quoted for years to come. You had a chance to stop this with words and laws. You chose not to, so Earth will stop it with actions. And when this is over, remember that you could have prevented everything that happens next. You chose not to. Year 3 brought new escalation. Earth's cyber warfare division had been quietly infiltrating Vexari computer networks. Now they struck. Banking records disappeared. Tax records vanished. Legal documents that proved ownership of property and businesses simply ceased to exist. The Vexari economy did not just decline. It became impossible to function. Nobody knew who owned what. Contracts could not be enforced because the records were gone. The entire system of commerce ground to a halt. Overlord Vrexkal called an emergency meeting of his advisors. The massive alien looked smaller now, hunched over reports that showed nothing but bad news. How is this possible? He demanded. They are one species. We control 40 systems. How are they destroying us? His military commander spoke carefully. Nobody wanted to anger the Overlord, but the truth had to be said. They are not fighting us the way we expected. They are not attacking our military directly. They are attacking everything else. Our economy, our reputation, our society, and they are very good at it. Then release the humans. Send them back. End this We tried, Overlord. 3 times we have offered to return them. Earth refuses to negotiate. They say negotiations ended when we took their people. Vrexkal stared at the holographic display showing his crumbling empire. He had expected a conventional response. Pay the ransom or attack with military force. Instead, Earth had done something he never imagined. They had decided to simply destroy the Vexari Empire piece by piece, and nothing he did could stop them. On Earth, Chancellor Bay received the latest reports with satisfaction. The campaign was working better than anyone had hoped. The Vexari were isolated, economically ruined, and militarily weakened. But he knew the hardest part was still coming. They had to keep going. They had to push the Vexari to complete collapse, because if they stopped now, if they showed any mercy, it would send a message to every species in the galaxy. It would say that taking humans had consequences, but not terrible ones. Not permanent ones. Earth could not allow that message. The message had to be clear and absolute. Touch humanity and we will erase you. Admiral Hyunwoo Park stood in the command center of his flagship, looking at the strategic display. 3 years of operations. 3 years of systematic destruction, and still his sister remained in captivity somewhere in Vexari space. He thought about stopping, about offering the Vexari a deal, but then he remembered the footage. The children being taken, the families torn apart, the casual cruelty of beings who saw humans as nothing more than tools. No, there would be no deals. There would be no mercy. There would only be the complete and total destruction of everything the Vexari had built. And when it was done, when the Vexari Empire was nothing but dust and memories, then Earth would come for its people, not before. Because the lesson had to be learned. The price had to be paid in full. They took our friends, and Earth would make sure no joy was left in what they had done. By year 5, the Vexari Empire was dying, not quickly like a star going supernova, slowly, like a tree rotting from the inside. Captain Daejung Kim stood on the bridge of his stealth ship, watching another Vexari mining facility go dark, not because his team had destroyed it, because the Vexari themselves had shut it down. There was no point running a mine when you could not sell what you extracted. There was no point maintaining equipment when you could not afford spare parts. The facility's lights blinked out one by one, and Kim felt nothing. Once he might have felt satisfaction. Now he just felt tired. He had been conducting operations for 5 years straight. His team had sabotaged hundreds of targets. They had left their calling cards in places that should have been impossible to reach, and still it was not enough. Still the human captives remained in Vexari camps. Still the war continued. Dr. Nari Choi had moved beyond information warfare. Now she was conducting something darker, social engineering on a massive scale. Earth's agents had infiltrated Vexari society at every level. They spread rumors carefully designed to create division. They amplified existing conflicts between regions, between social classes, between generations. They made sure that every Vexari blamed someone else for the collapse. The northern colonies blamed the southern colonies for starting the war with Earth. The workers blamed the elite for profiting from slave labor. The young blamed the old for destroying their future, and everyone blamed the government. Vexari society was tearing itself apart, and Earth was carefully pulling every thread that would make the tear wider. Nari sat in her office late at night, reading reports about Vexari families displaced by the economic collapse. Children going hungry. Elderly Vexari dying because medical facilities had shut down. Communities fragmenting into violence as desperation grew. She told herself these were necessary casualties. She told herself that the Vexari leadership had brought this on their own people. She told herself that showing weakness now would invite future attacks on humanity. But late at night, alone in her office, she wondered if she was becoming the monster she was fighting. Then she would remember the footage of human children being taken, and she would go back to work. Admiral Hyunwoo Park received intelligence that made his blood run cold. Multiple Vexari colonies were attempting to secede from the Empire. They wanted to negotiate separately with Earth, offering to release any human captives in their territories in exchange for being left alone. It was tempting. It would bring thousands of humans home immediately. But Hyunwoo knew it was a trap. Not an intentional one, but a trap nonetheless. If Earth accepted deals from individual colonies, the Vexari Empire would fragment completely. The central government would fall. And in the chaos, tracking down all the human captives would become impossible. No, they had to maintain pressure on the Empire as a whole. They had to force a complete surrender, not piecemeal negotiations, even if it meant more years of war. Even if it meant more suffering for the captives, Hyunwoo approved the response. Earth would accept nothing less than unconditional surrender from the Vexari central government and verified release of all human captives. Overlord Vrexkal was drinking. He was not supposed to drink. His species metabolized alcohol poorly, and it made him say things he should not say. But he was drinking anyway because the alternative was thinking clearly about the disaster his empire had become. His advisors had abandoned him. Some had fled to other species' territories. Others had simply disappeared. The few who remained told him things he did not want to hear. The empire was bankrupt. The military was barely functional. Half the colonies were in open rebellion, and Earth showed no sign of stopping. Release the humans, his economic minister said for the 100th time. Just release them. Give Earth what they want. We tried, Vrexkal said, his words slurred. 6 times we offered. They will not negotiate. They want us destroyed. Then destroy yourself on your terms, not theirs. Release the humans unilaterally. Announce it to the galaxy. Maybe Earth will stop if they have their people back. Vrexkal looked at the holographic map of his empire. Every day it showed more red, indicating systems in crisis. Soon there would be no empire left to govern. He made his decision. The broadcast went out across every communication channel. Overlord Vrexkal, looking old and defeated, announced that all human captives would be released immediately. Every labor camp would be opened. Every human would be provided transport to neutral territory where Earth could retrieve them. He did not ask for peace. He did not negotiate terms. He simply stated that the humans were free to go, and he hoped Earth would show mercy now that their people were returned. The galaxy watched and waited for Earth's response. Chancellor Bay stood before the Council of Earth, reading the intelligence reports. The Vexari were actually releasing the captives. Camps were being opened. Humans were being transported to collection points. It was real. Some council members argued that Earth should accept this. The goal had been achieved. The humans would come home. The war could end, but Bay knew better. He had learned something about power during these 5 years. He had learned that the lesson only worked if it was complete. If Earth stopped now, the message would be that taking humans had consequences, but survivable ones. Future enemies would do the math and decide the risk was acceptable. No, the message had to be absolute. It had to be permanent. It had to make every species in the galaxy understand that humanity was not to be touched under any circumstances. Earth's response was brief and cold. The Vexari Empire had the opportunity for negotiation when they took our people. They chose profit over mercy. Now they offer to return what they stole and expect gratitude. They expect the war to end. We reject this expectation. We will retrieve our people ourselves, and we will continue operations until the Vexari Empire no longer exists as a political entity. This is not negotiable. The galaxy reacted with shock. Some species called Earth's stance cruel and unnecessary. Others understood perfectly. Earth was making an example. They were drawing a line that could never be crossed again. Hana Song watched the announcement from her apartment on Earth. She had spent 2 years testifying, speaking at rallies and advocating for the captives. Now she faced a choice. She could argue for peace. She could say that Earth had done enough, that the captives were coming home, that further destruction served no purpose. Or she could remember the guards who laughed when prisoners fell. The children forced to work until they collapsed. The complete absence of mercy shown to humans in Vexari hands. She scheduled a press conference. When the cameras turned on, she spoke clearly. I am glad my fellow captives are being released, but I support Earth's decision to continue operations. The Vexari did not show mercy when they took us. They did not show mercy during 5 years of captivity. They offer freedom now only because they are losing. That is not mercy. That is defeat. And Earth has earned the right to define what victory looks like. Public opinion remained firmly behind the war. Polls showed 92% of humans supporting continued operations. The few who argued for peace were drowned out by those who remembered the abductions. Admiral Hyun-Woo Park authorized Operation Reckoning. The Strategic Vengeance Fleet would jump into Vexari space, retrieve all human captives, and then implement the final phase of the campaign. The final phase had a simple goal: make sure the Vexari Empire could never recover. Not in a decade. Not in a century. Never. Captain Kim's Ghost Wing was assigned to join the fleet. As his ship prepared for the jump to faster-than-light travel, he looked at his team. They were exhausted. Some had been injured during operations and never fully healed. All of them had changed during 5 years of systematic sabotage. One more mission, Kim said. We go in, we help retrieve our people, and we finish this. After that, we can rest. His second-in-command, a woman named Officer Yoon, smiled grimly. They had been through every operation together. She knew what he was thinking. Rest, she said. I almost forgot what that word means. The fleet assembled. 147 ships carrying medical personnel, support staff, and enough firepower to fight their way out if needed. But intelligence suggested they would face no resistance. The Vexari military had been ordered to stand down. They were not coming to negotiate. They were not coming to conquer. They were coming to take back what was stolen and then burn everything else to ash. Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the star charts. Somewhere in that Vexari space was his sister Jiwon. After 5 years, he would finally see her again, if she was still alive. The Vexari reported that many captives had died during their imprisonment. Earth did not know the exact number yet, but Hyunwoo had to believe his sister survived. He had to believe that all of this had been worth it. All ships report ready, his communications officer announced. Hyunwoo took a breath. 5 years of planning. 5 years of operations. 5 years of systematic destruction. It all came down to this moment. Jump on my mark, he said. 3, 2, 1 mark. Space twisted. The fleet vanished from Earth's solar system and reappeared deep in Vexari territory. The war was entering its final phase. And the Vexari were about to learn that Earth's mercy had died the day they took the first human. The fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 147 human ships appeared in Vexari space, and not a single shot was fired at them. Admiral Hyunwoo Park watched the tactical display. Vexari military vessels were present, dozens of them, but they maintained distance. Their weapons were powered down. They were simply watching as Earth came to take back its people. It felt wrong somehow. After 5 years of warfare, Hyunwoo had expected resistance. He had prepared for battle. Instead, the Vexari were just letting them in. All ships proceed to designated coordinates, he ordered. Medical teams prepare for mass evacuation. Security forces remain alert. This could still be a trap. But it was not a trap. It was surrender. Complete and total surrender. The first labor camp they reached was on a mining world called Vex Prime. The transport ships landed outside the facility, and medical teams rushed in with equipment and supplies. What they found made even hardened soldiers stop and stare. Humans in ragged clothes, too thin, covered in scars and dirt. Some could barely walk. Others had to be carried. Children who looked decades older than their years. Adults who stared with empty eyes that had seen too much suffering. The medical officer in charge, Dr. Kang, moved through the crowd with her team. She had treated battlefield injuries before. She had seen war. But this was different. This was systematic cruelty stretched across 5 years. "We need more supplies," she said into her communicator, her voice shaking. "More ships. More everything. The reports did not prepare us for this." Admiral Park went down to the surface himself. He had to see. He had to know what his sister had endured. What all of them had endured. He walked through the camp, past the crude sleeping quarters, past the work areas where humans had been forced to process toxic materials without proper protection. He saw the records the Vexari had kept, tracking each human like inventory. Production quotas, punishment logs, death certificates, 380,000 deaths. The number he had known intellectually now had faces, names, stories. People who had died far from home. Worked to death by creatures who saw them as tools. He found his sister in the medical processing area. Ji-won was sitting on a bench waiting her turn for examination. She looked up when he approached, and for a moment she did not recognize him. Then her eyes widened. "Hyunwoo?" He sat down next to her, and for the first time in 5 years, Admiral Hyunwoo Park allowed himself to cry. His sister was alive. Scarred, changed, but alive. "I am sorry," he said. "I am so sorry it took this long." Ji-won touched his face with a trembling hand. She was too thin, and her skin showed signs of chemical burns from the work she had been forced to do. "You came," she whispered. "We knew you would come. Even when some people lost hope, I told them. Earth does not abandon its people. My brother does not give up." The evacuation took 3 weeks. Every human captive had to be located, medically assessed, and transported to Earth ships. Some were in facilities that had not been on official records. Earth forces had to search systematically, checking every Vexari installation. Hana Song had joined the fleet, serving as a liaison. She helped survivors adjust to their rescue, explaining what was happening, providing comfort to those who were too traumatized to understand that they were finally free. She recognized some people from her own camp. They embraced and cried together, but there were so many missing, so many who had not survived to see this day. While the evacuation proceeded, Captain Dae-jung Kim and his Ghost Wing team conducted the final phase of operations. They moved through Vexari military installations, systematically destroying everything that could be used for warfare. Not with explosives. That would be too quick, too easy to rebuild. Instead, they used specialized equipment that made the technology permanently unusable. Weapons that would never fire again. Ships that would never fly. Manufacturing equipment turned into expensive scrap metal. The Vexari military watched but did not interfere. Their soldiers looked defeated, broken. Some had tears in their eyes as they watched their empire being dismantled piece by piece. On the 4th day, Kim encountered a Vexari officer standing outside a disabled command center. The alien was young, probably barely old enough to serve. It looked at Kim with something that might have been despair. "Why?" the Vexari asked in broken human language. "You have your people back. Why continue this?" Kim stopped. He had been asked this question before by his own conscience. He looked at the young soldier and spoke quietly. "Because you need to remember. Every species in this galaxy needs to remember what happens when you take humans. Not just defeat, not just consequences, complete destruction, so that nobody ever makes this mistake again." He walked away, leaving the Vexari soldier standing alone among the ruins of his civilization. Dr. Nari Choi arrived in Vexari space 2 weeks into the operation. She came to broadcast the final message, the one that would be remembered across the galaxy for generations. Standing on the bridge of the flagship, with camera drones recording, she addressed not just the Vexari but every species that was watching, and they were all watching. This moment would be studied in history classes for centuries. 5 years ago, the Vexari Empire made a decision. They looked at humanity and saw weakness. They saw our value for individual lives as a flaw to exploit. They took 3.2 million of our people and expected us to negotiate or accept defeat. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, which somehow made it more frightening. They were wrong. Our value for individual lives is not weakness. It is our greatest strength. Because when you harm one human, you declare war on all of us, and we will not stop until the threat is eliminated completely. She gestured to the display behind her, showing the dismantled Vexari military installations. The Vexari Empire no longer exists as a military power. Their economy is destroyed. Their reputation is ruined. Their future is gone. This is not cruelty. This is consequence. This is what happens when you mistake humanity for prey. She paused, letting the words sink in. To every species watching this broadcast, understand clearly. We do not seek conflict. We do not want war. But if you harm our people, if you take our citizens, if you treat humanity as something you can exploit, we will do this to you. Not defeat, not occupation, complete erasure. We will make sure that even if you survive, you will wish you had made different choices. The broadcast ended. The silence that followed echoed across the galaxy. Overlord Vrexcal was arrested on the 7th day of Earth's presence in Vexari space. His own people turned him over, hoping it might earn them mercy from Earth. He was transported to a neutral world where the Galactic Council convened a tribunal. Species from across known space attended. Everyone wanted to see the architect of the disaster face justice. The trial lasted 4 weeks. Human prosecutors presented evidence methodically. Every order Vrexcal had given, every report he had received about conditions in the labor camps. Every time he had been informed that humans were dying and chose to continue operations anyway. Vrexcal tried to defend himself. He claimed he had not known the full extent of the suffering. He said it had been necessary for his empire's economy. He argued that he had tried to end the conflict by offering to return the captives. The prosecutor, a human woman named Judge Min, dismantled every argument. "You knew," she said simply, holding up documents. "These are your own reports. You knew humans were dying. You knew children were being forced to work. You knew, and you chose profit over mercy. Now you face the consequences of that choice." The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Crimes against sentient beings. Slavery. Mass murder through negligence and deliberate cruelty. He was sentenced to life imprisonment on a remote penal world. He would spend the rest of his existence contemplating what his decisions had cost his people. As guards led him away, he stopped and turned to look at the humans in the courtroom. "We thought you were weak," he said quietly. "We were wrong. You are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because of your weapons, because you never stop. You never forgive. You never forget." Judge Min looked at him without expression. "You are correct. We do not forget. And we made sure you will never forget either." Guards take him away. The last human captive was evacuated on day 22, a young boy, found in a facility that had been operating secretly. He was 10 years old and had spent half his life in captivity. When he stepped onto the transport ship and saw humans in uniform smiling at him, he started crying. Not from sadness, from relief. "Is it real?" he asked the soldier who picked him up. "Are we really going home?" "Yes," the soldier said, carrying him toward the medical bay. "We are going home. All of us." Admiral Hyunwoo Park stood on the bridge of his flagship as the fleet prepared to depart Vexari space. Behind them, they left a broken empire, a shattered military, and a lesson that would echo through history. They had come for their people. They had delivered vengeance, and now they were going home. His sister Ji-won stood beside him, still recovering but growing stronger every day. She looked out at the stars and then at her brother. "Was it worth it?" she asked softly. "All the destruction, all the suffering on both sides. Was it worth it?" Hyunwoo thought about the question. He thought about the 380,000 humans who died in captivity. He thought about the celebrations lasted for weeks. Every human world held parades and ceremonies. People lined the streets as transport ships landed, bringing home the survivors. Families reunited. Friends embraced. An entire civilization exhaled after holding its breath for 5 years. But behind the celebrations, the real work was beginning. The survivors needed more than just welcome home parties. They needed medical care, psychological support, and time to heal from wounds that went deeper than flesh. Hana Song stood before the memorial wall on Earth, looking at the names carved into black stone. 380,000 names. People who never made it home. She touched one name in particular, a woman she had known in the camps who had died 6 months before liberation. So close. They had come so close to saving everyone. A hand touched her shoulder. She turned to see an elderly man, tears streaming down his face. He pointed to a name on the wall.